Hello, everyone, and welcome tonight. Conversation with Dr. Anthony Mattis. How are you, Anthony?
Hello, Nicolette. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, thank you for coming on. Do you remember that we had a conversation like 2 years ago? No, like a year and a half ago, something like that, or a year ago? When was your
Yeah.
last class in Budapest?
It was January of 2023, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or February. Yeah, one of those two. But yeah. So yeah, year and a half ago, almost. No, a year and like 3 months.
Yeah. Wow. So much changed since then.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That would be my first question because I don't know if you remember last time you were talking about energy and what is the opening to the symphony class that you're hosting here in Budapest next
Mhm.
week. And I wanted to ask you, like, what changed for you in the past year since we had the conversation? Because I'm sure so much. And what would you say today?
Oh my God. I would say that it stretched me in ways that I could not have ever really imagined. And when I mean like it stretched me, it's sort of like it just opened up these universes inside my universe. So it gave me access to more space, more possibilities, and it's made me stronger just as a person, as a being. And it's quite remarkable because within my family right now, kind of going through a little bit of a difficult time. Some people are just struggling with different things. And so in the height of all of these struggles, I'm finding myself being able to access these beautiful, miraculous, energetic spaces, which is really available for all of us, but it also is sort of a reminder of what my reality is when maybe the world may be falling apart. So to be able to access these spaces when you're sort of in the middle of a shitstorm, right? With things that people that are close to you are choosing crap and their lives are getting turned upside down. I'm able to go to these spaces where like what we would call in this reality is like magical, and I'm like, Jesus, what? I just spilled water all over the place. Anyway, that's what happens. I'm Italian and I like to talk with my hands a lot. So, yeah, it's like, wow, just because there are people that you love that are struggling, it doesn't mean you have to struggle with them. You can still actually have your reality, the magic of your life and living, even when they're struggling for whatever reason. And it was like, it's really a remarkable sensation to experience this beautiful joy and magic and possibilities and oneness, especially when you facilitate the class, because what has shown up for me is like what we are able to create together, not just me as the facilitator, but us, like facilitator and the participants. So together we create this space that we all get to share in and access in. And so to be able to have that, and then you have this yuck, 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 all this crazy stuff going on here. It's like, wow, very, very, very different realities, and both just as intense in their own different ways. But it's really cool to know that you don't have to be completely at the effect of the craziness over here and still have your space and possibilities.
How can we access that space?
Well, it's really not like a how. Well, you know what? Yeah, well, it's not a how, like, you push this button and all of a sudden everything goes, and you're like, oh, I wish it was like that easy. But everything that we do within the umbrella of Access Consciousness, starting from Access Consciousness bars, starting with the foundation class, where you learn about the 10 keys to freedom, and in these, really all the classes and access are really all designed to help you to learn how to receive things, not just material things, but like to receive on an energetic level so that you can actualize the things in your life that you actually desire. But in order to actualize the things that you desire in your life, you have to be willing to receive them, right? And so many of us are stuck in our traumas and dramas, or our abuses that we've had, or, you know, maybe just our low self-esteem, and we buy those stories as real and true, so we never see anything beyond that. And so what Access begins to do, starting with the bars, Access Consciousness bars, it begins to create this space where you're like, oh, wait a minute, there is something available to me beyond my story, beyond my pain and suffering, beyond, even if my family members are falling apart, I don't have to fall apart with them. And so I would say it helps. It's not a how, but it's something that you begin to access as you start to use the tools, which is more receiving, and which also creates a space of vulnerability if you're willing to have that. Now, I know, you know, in this world, in this reality, we talk about vulnerability being a weakness. And what if that was your greatest superpower? You know, the idea of vulnerability is to actually have your walls and barriers down so you can perceive, know, be, and receive everything, and without a point of view. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to access that truly, then you basically have access to all energies, because you're willing to receive all kinds of energies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, with no point of view. And you can create the life that you actually desire in any area: money, relationships, bodily things. You know?
I've been to many classes before, and I took SOP also. But I guess many of the people who are listening or going to listen later, they don't really know what is the symphony, and what about, like, what is energy for you? Because for many people, this is like, you know, something. It's amazing to listen to you, and yes, it's just I will share what happened to me today. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. And I was surprised that, like, things can get so funky. And just sitting here, I'm like, all of that is gone. And I'm sure that everyone who's listening, they feel the same way. They like have these walls and barriers down. But you know, when someone haven't taken a class, they don't really know what are these energies. So can you say more about them?
Oh man, what are the energies? That's a beautiful question. And I'm not going to say it's near impossible to explain. I can only explain what the energies have been for me. You know, it's sort of like, you know, if there's an event that occurs and there's 50 people that are there at the event, right? They're all going to filter and perceive and receive that experience in their own ways. I know for me, you know, by the time I got to Access, I was like, okay, I've tried everything, and things worked a little bit, but they didn't really change my life. And so Access really started changing my life, and I started accessing these spaces, which created a knowing in my universe. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I know that. And it's not intellectual things. It's things that are sort of beyond the everyday life stuff of living. Like, so what are the energies? What do they feel like? Sometimes it's a sensation in your body. Sometimes it could actually feel overwhelming if you're just trying to receive it through your body alone. And that's why we do this exercise where we're like, hey, find the outside edges of you, the being, not just your body. Because if you try to receive infinite energy only through your body, you're going to feel like you're going to have a heart attack. But so I'll give you a lot of different things of how it has felt for me. There are times where it actually felt incredibly orgasmic. Like, oh my God, like how we would define like sexual orgasm, but not from a space of contraction, but a space of expansion. It's like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Then be times of like where you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. And then you just start crying and weeping with tears of gratitude. And a lot of that is just your body also releasing and dissipating just a lot of the sorrow that it has been holding on to, the sadness, you know, and whatever grief that you've had throughout your life. And so there's that cathartic, energetic release. So you can have that. There are times where you're receiving these infinite energies, if you will, and you just want to yell and scream. It's like you feel like just like you're like, and if I see that happening with someone, I'm like, do you feel like you need to scream? They're like, yes. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's a pillow. Scream in the pillow, right? Because we don't want to like scare all the people in the hotel, right, that are working in the hotel. So, but it's like, you know, with regards to that, it's like when you have spent your whole life stopping you and allowing people to stop you with maybe the way they've abused you or gaslighted you into making you less and whatever, then all of a sudden this potency starts wanting to come out, but you're like fighting it and no, push it back, push it back, push it back. And you're like, no, and you start to like have this feeling of like rage. You don't want to go to rage, right? Because that's a bad thing, but it's really not rage. It's really your potency starting to come out. And you just want to be like, ah, like no more. This stops now. Fuck this. So it's like being the space for someone to actually have the permission to, you know what? In that instance, it's okay to be fucking angry. Yeah, when you've been suppressing yourself for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, that's fucking frustrating. So we're not talking about like anger in the sense of like where you're being angry and you're creating separation. We're talking about like, you just kind of just angry at yourself for buying other people's lies about you. And even you buying your lies about you, especially when it has to do with making yourself less. So a lot of times these sessions will be like that comes out, like no more, it stops now. And it's fucking really beautiful to see. And then there are times like after a session where I'm like, oh, I just want to hug myself. Like, this is really like, oh, this is really cool. You're such a beautiful person. You know, where you've spent most of your life judging the crap out of yourself. So, and then aside from all of that, for me, you know, it's like to get an awareness of like, oh my God, you mean these tools are more than just getting you past your pain and suffering? Like you could actually be happy, like really happy. And then people are like, well, what's happiness? You know, and somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like, well, to me, happiness is not like necessarily this feeling of being high. You know, to me, happiness is like ease. It's expressing for me, it's expressing my talents and gifts and capacities, having a conversation with you, like doing this with you right now makes me happy, right? And I'm assuming it makes you happy too.
Yes.
Doing it. And gratitude, you know, being in that space of gratitude. Oh man, oh, you just gave me some downloads right now too, because I was going to go to the word love, but I'm not going to get into that because we have a lot of new beginners, but I may bring it up in the OS class in Budapest. And I just got more awareness of like what love can create, but not in the way that we think. And I'm starting to see more energetically what Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, means by that. But anyway, we have all these ideas of what love means. And like your idea of love might be different than my idea of love, right? So then you have to be in judgment of me of whether or not I'm fitting your idea of what love is. And I have to be in judgment of you to see if you're fitting or aligning and agreeing with whatever my points of view. And then it automatically creates a separation. You know, hence why relationships are so difficult. And then just even like, just look throughout the world. I mean, just in politics, it's like, goodness gracious, everybody's got different points of view about what's right and what's wrong. And in the meantime, we're slowly destroying our planet, and we are, you know, I don't know, being driven by people that have no interest in your health or wellness or vitality, but really more of their pocketbooks or their purses or wallets, like big pharma and big tech, and try to control the whole world.
Yeah. You said so many things that we could just move on with.
I know. Sorry about that.
There's so many things, but is it available for everyone?
Yeah. That was something that like, thank you for asking that. That was something that showed up to me because I didn't think I was good at energy work. You know, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm a chiropractor by trade. And I always looked at these people who did like the really out of the box type of chiropractic. And I'm like, oh, that looks so cool, you know, but I don't know. They always seem to know what they're doing except for me. And then, it probably took me, like when Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, acknowledged that I have a capacity in this area, it probably took me about 2.5, 3 years before I could really start to, let's say, feel it or perceive it. Really, the real word is to perceive it. And I'll never forget, we were at a maestro class, which is sort of like the highest level of the Symphony of Possibilities class. It requires like the most amount of prerequisites and stuff. And I'll never forget, it was like we were doing these trades back and forth, and I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack, actually, because the energies were so intense. And then I got facilitated by Dain, Dr. Dain here, who actually created this wonderful modality, if you will, the Symphony of Possibilities and energetic synthesis of being. And we could talk about that in a little bit. But I went back and I started working on my partner, and then they were working on me, and it was literally like, it was like not the sky, but it was like, I don't know, it was like another dimension went, and then it went, and I was like, and I was like, whoa. And in that moment is when I realized I had accessed something more of me. And in that moment, I also got this download of, wow, this is available to everyone, not just to the select few. But you have to, going back to the very first question, you have to be willing to put yourself in a position to receive it. You got to be willing to put yourself in a position to receive it. So I don't know, that was like 4 years. So I've been doing Access in total for 12 years now, a little bit over 12 years. And I would say that was maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So that's like 8 years of me. Now I have had a lot of those types of things show up, but not to that intensity. But I had so many things that would show up in my life that motivated me to keep taking more classes, really. You know, I'm like, oh my God, if that happened, what else is possible? I go to the next class, and sometimes it's a big bitch slap too. It's not always this juicy orgasmic energy. Sometimes it's like, and it's like, I'm such a loser. Oh my God, I'm never gonna, you know what I mean? And it's like, but
oh yeah, it happened to me last time at the maestro class.
It did.
I was hiding in my room, and I came back to Budapest, and for a week I was like, no, don't talk to me. I felt like depressed and sad. I knew I wasn't. It just changed something.
Yeah, you kind of go through this metamorphosis where you really need the space to go through the change and not have anybody around you. And again, that's where that space of vulnerability, the willingness to be vulnerable with the discomfort, because you're really like, it's really stripping down all of your structures, all of your stability points, all of your reference points. Why? So that you have space. Because once you have space, then there's nothing to come against anything you would like to be and choose. But it's not comfortable always.
Yeah.
It's not, because you're like, what the fuck? Like, just why do I feel so raw and vulnerable here? You know, but I knew when that happened to me back in the early days, I knew I was finally getting the change that I had always asked for, because no other modality ever made me feel that uncomfortable.
Can you give us a little bit of background of you? Because you said that you were a chiropractor before, and a DC, right? That's how you say it in the US.
Doctor of chiropractic, yep.
Yeah. But how can us imagine you like 12 years ago? Like, how was your life? Or how, like, yeah, how did, like, because last time when I took this class with you, I was amazed. I just told you before we started that we had this intro evening, not intro, but an evening class, and everyone in the class, they basically never done any SOP or energetic class before. And then you were like, okay, let's do it. And everyone knew what they were doing. Like, you didn't have to explain them, like even the kids and everyone.
That's right. Everybody jumped right in.
I was like, you are amazing. You know something? Like, it was just, that was so easy, so light, and so refreshing.
Thank you.
And anything you just shared about yourself and your past, I imagine that wasn't the case before. So you changed it.
Hell no. Well, I changed it, but I also had a lot of facilitation from, you know, again, the creator of Access Consciousness and Dain, Dr. Dain here, who created, again, this co-creator of Access. And, you know, because he's like, he saw this thing in me, and I'm like, but I can't, you know, what makes me different than, and he kept saying it's your being. It's your being. And I'm like, what do you mean my being? Like, what does that mean? Because I'm a nice guy. So at that time, 12 years ago, actually, let's go back a year before that, 13 years ago, you know, the kid's mom had committed suicide. She struggled from mental illness, bipolar disorder. And, you know, she had an episode, as they called it. And yeah, I mean, you know, she just, you know, I remember her saying the day before she took her life was like, I don't want you and the kids to have to go through this. And I was like begging her. I'm like, hey, please, look, we'll deal with one bad year for 5.5, 6 good ones. Cause she had an episode 5.5 years before that. So anyway, so after she died, I literally was on my hands and knees because her and I studied so many other techniques and modalities. We did everything. We also we went to church. We prayed in tongues. We loved Jesus. We did that. We had a guru. We did the mantras. We did our chants. We did our bird calls, our meditations. We did that. We did metaphysics before that, and so many other different modalities in between. And so she, you know, she dies. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know anybody that's worked as hard as I have and she has to know God or consciousness, right? And have nothing to show for it. So I was like, what the fuck? And I really remember saying, and I also went to therapy in my early 20s and late 20s and 30s and stuff. Cause I'm like, help me, therapist. Here's all my skeletons. Like, help me to achieve what I know is possible, but no matter where I look, I can't access it. And the therapist loved me because I was like an open book. As you can see, I can fucking talk. I love to talk. But it was like, I wanted to share. I wanted them to know my deep, dark secrets because I didn't want to fucking suffer all my life, you know? And so anyway, so after she died, I'm like, I don't get it. And I was talking to God in that moment. I was like, hey, God, I really don't get it. Everybody else seems to live normal lives and they're okay. I'm working my ass off to achieve consciousness, to be one with you. And she's dead, right? Medicine didn't work. She shut down the natural stuff. I don't fucking get it. And so there's got to be, and then I had to say to myself, okay, let's pretend that event never even happened. So I pushed that tragedy over here and I'm like, am I happy with me in my life? And the answer was no. And at this time, I'm a dad. The kids were 11, 9, and 3. Wow. And I'm like, what am I gonna fucking do? And then I remember being like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that they don't get sick like that. And that's another topic for another day, but not now. And
you have to come back.
I spent a lot of my parenting educating them about mental illness and things like that, and studying different tools and techniques. And then I remember saying, you know, okay, God, there's got to be a modality out there that goes beyond the subconscious mind. Because I've overturned everything in my subconscious. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. I have nothing. There's got, maybe wherever I'm messed up, maybe it's someone out here, somewhere out there. It's not in the subconscious mind. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, it was like a few weeks later, I get this email of all these healing practitioners that were given these free webinars during the year of 2012. And the very first one, January 2012, there was a free webinar about access consciousness bars. And basically what they said was, what I heard them saying is the very thing I was actually asking for is, yeah, it really undoes where you're messed up. That's like beyond the subconscious mind. It gets to where you're screwed up and locked up energetically. And that really resonated with me. And I was like, okay, but it sounds like a really weird, this might be the weirdest modality I ever do, you know? And I did bird calls with a guru. I spoke in tongues in church. So I did a lot of weird things, you know? And this one was really weird, especially the clearing statement. And yeah, and the weirdest thing happened. I remember after I heard that call, I looked up Access and I saw Dain. And I actually sent him an email because I thought it was just a tiny little company. I had no idea it was as big as it was. So I sent him an email. I'm crying as I'm doing. I'm like, you're a chiropractor. I'm a chiropractor. We're like the same. And he was suicidal and my wife committed suicide. Bah. And then I send the email and then boom, I get an auto reply back. And I'm like, oh. A week and a half later, he calls me in my chiropractic clinic. I had not gone to a bars class, and he's like, "Hey, man," and one of the first things he said, he's like, "I just want you to know the universe has your back."
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't meet him for like a year and a half later from that point. So anyway, you know, I don't know. So that's sort of where I was, and to be where I am now is miraculous. I didn't expect to be where I am now, like with Access. I just, you know, saw it as like, you know, a set of tools, and then I would still keep my chiropractic practice open. But no, I mean, it's like now I do this full time. I've been doing it full time since the last 7 years, since 2017. I closed my practice down because I'm able to change people's lives in ways I wasn't able to do as a chiropractor. And this brings me great reward, not only professionally, but also personally as well.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
And not just your past, but also how aware is Dain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was so amazing.
That's amazing.
The, like, I don't know, the stars aligning, as they say. Because what's the probability of him calling me back? And what was cool is Katerina Wallington, who's sort of like one of his main assistants, if you will, she's the one who read the email. It was like her job to like screen the emails. So she had the awareness of like, hey, Dain, you need to read this.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing's come full circle, and now we're all dear friends and support each other and have each other's back. And now he's invited me to do this thing called Opening of the Symphony, which is, for me, as he's grown with Access. I know you guys are dear friends as well, and you've seen his growth over the years as well. As he continues to grow, it's like the Symphony of Possibilities, which is the class that he facilitates, has gotten so energetically big and grand that when a lot of like the newer people, or even people that have been around for a while, they're kind of like, huh? What are you saying? I don't get it. No, only you can do it. Nobody else can do it like you know? And so I'm like, hey man, I'm like, so like for the last 4 years, I've been kind of nudging him like, hey, I really feel like I could be a bridge from like where people are starting to like what you're trying to get people to, but they can't access that because right now you're like a big, bright, shiny light, and all they can see is the big, bright, shiny light, and they're not even hearing a goddamn thing you're saying. And it's not to say my light's not shiny, but it's like, I don't know, I kind of present it in a way where I sort of like interpret what Dain says in a way where everyone can sort of like maybe, where it becomes more, as we say, palpable, I guess. Yeah. And then so yeah, it's been a gift. It's been an honor to be able to, be able to do this.
I have to say everything you just said is true, because I took my first SOP class with Dain. It wasn't an opening class back then. And then I took 2 others or 3, I can't remember. And then I took a class with you last year, and I was like, oh, now it makes sense what we are doing here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's less, it's just really different. Yeah. And it gives you a different access to the whole thing. And then when you go to Dain's class, you're like, oh yeah, I'm prepared for this.
Yeah. So it's fun, and it's like, even though it's a beginning class or now a prerequisite before you can go to the Symphony of Possibilities, it's really not a beginning class. It's like your world will get rocked for sure. You know. And it's been beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, because that's the feedback I get from a lot of the people who have already done the Symphony of Possibility classes. They're like, thank you. I finally feel like I can actually now be and do SOP, whereas before, like, they would feel kind of lost.
Yeah, I kind of knew, because when I had the conversation with you a year ago, or a little bit more, it was, one is like refreshing. And also, I don't know, you have something to your being. I guess Gary was right about that. It's like you have something to your being that it starts to melt the walls and the barriers, and then everything that people have, you know. And what like my sense is now, I feel less wrong.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's
Thank you
amazing.
for that, because that's my one of my targets is for people to get out of the wrongness of themselves, because God knows I've I have made myself wrong my entire life, because a lot of the systems and structures that are set up in this reality
Yeah.
basically made me wrong and said I was less. So when you have to try to like create new pathways in your brain to be like, hey, I'm not a piece of shit. Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe I do have some talents and capacities and stuff, but I just wasn't able to express them anywhere until access came along. And so I'm super grateful. And that's sort of one of the main messages my targets that I'd like to get across to people. So thank you for receiving it and hearing that, because that makes me happy.
Yeah. And it's amazing, like it's a good next step after like a foundation class. And now the prerequisite is only foundation if I
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'll tell you, Nicolette, it's awesome because it's relatively new. And you know what? People are jumping into this symphony universe like that. They
Yeah.
don't even know what they're doing, but
Yeah.
they do, because the whole weekend is just about being.
And so can you say, I don't know if you have some time, a little bit, like a
Yeah,
couple more minutes? Okay.
sure.
So can you say more? What is symphony? Why it's symphony? What it does, and how we can, imagine that?
Yeah. So I think Dain was in New York City and he was doing, I don't know if he was doing an ESB class. I forget which one of the classes, but he went to a symphony. And so where before you get to the Symphony of Possibilities class, and then after my class, you take an energetic synthesis of being class, right? And then people will want to learn how to do this work. And so he was at this symphony and he was watching how all the different instruments were an integral part of making the whole entire song, right? They all contributed, and yet each instrument has its own frequency. And with each instrument, it has different ranges of frequencies and vibrations and tones and whatever, right? And together, they come together and as like they have this symphony that makes this beautiful song, which is what we're doing. So that's where he got the symphony of possibilities. And it's really like truly that. And it's cute because then when he goes to have the advanced SOP, which is called Maestro, right? What's the Maestro
Yeah.
doing? You know what I mean? Right? And
Right.
so we are engaging with the quantum entanglements of the universe. We are working with the quantum entanglements of the universe because we are part of it. And
Mm.
so each person that's like everybody, we all have our unique energies and capacities, and you don't even have to know what they are. Just know that you have your own energetic blueprint. And so when we play in the symphony universe, you become your instrument at your variety of frequencies. And that is the contribution to the person you are working on and with. And by the way, they are receiving, that contributes to you as the facilitator. So out of all the modalities I've ever learned, it's the only space where I have ever perceived receiving as I'm gifting. So that to me, that's what that is. But everything's a symphony. I mean, you just look at nature, it's a
Yeah.
perfect example of it.
That's what I wanted to share with you before that. Sunday, I had some space and I was at home, and I'm not living in Budapest anymore. So I'm living in kind of a countryside.
Mm,
And it's basically a new area. So new houses. It used to be like a field before.
beautiful.
And it's really beautiful. And so I was at home, it was rain, and then it started the sun picking up. And we went outside with my dog to the yard. It's like all these water drops dropping,
Wonderful.
like the sunshine, and the birds were chirping. It was, I couldn't believe it. I could hear the birds here, and then I could hear the birds down there. And I'm like, oh, that's the symphony, I guess, all of these
Yeah,
energies that you're perceiving. And it was beautiful.
it is beautiful.
It was
And it's in everything too. We take for granted where we be it. It's like the things that you be with your business and access consciousness bars and other things that it's like it's your being, and your being is what's actualizing all the great and wonderful things that you're doing. And I know we take it for granted because it's just something that we're like, wait, this is just me. I'm just being me. But well, exactly, right? But then like, so that is wonderful, right? But then like over here, we think that me is not enough or whatever me is, right? But it's not true. It's like you are enough. You don't have to be at the effect of your past. You don't have to be at the effect of your stories, or you don't have to be at the effect of your genetics or your DNA or any of that crap. It's your being, which is infinite. And to me, and it's like being able to access that and then living our lives and creating our lives and living from that space, to me is the key.
Wow, it's really beautiful. I'm amazed right now because wow, it's so true. It's your being. And this class gives you more access to your being.
Yes. And it may be uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you. You may shake for like the next 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. You know, I've been there. I know what that's like.
Yeah, I usually do. And I'm like, I'm basically in pieces and exhausted. And I just, yeah.
It could happen. It may not happen, but it might. And that's okay.
I love it. I love it sometimes because I can see my structures melting. So yeah. It's always good.
And as crappy as those structures are, a lot of us hold on to those structures for dear life too.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Anthony. I'm so grateful. And thank you guys for, thank you for being with us. So we had the Hungarian line and they were more people because not everyone speaks English, sorry. But I'm so grateful for everyone who joined us. And it was an amazing conversation. And I can't wait to see you next week. I hope it's going to be the biggest class yet. And you guys can join. We shared the links so you can register, sorry. And see you guys next week.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.